Hi everybody, it's Lisa, your grief guide. Today we have with us Nick, and I don't know Nick very well, just to be honest, but he has been willing to come and share his story with us today. And we always know that when we share our grief journeys, our stories can be very hard and have to relive things, but he was gracious enough to come and sharing, knowing that maybe he can help somebody out there. So Nick, welcome. Thanks for being with us.
No problem.
Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
So, I lost my twin brother Griffin when I was 10 years old. It was in December of 2011. We were on our way to swim practice and we got into a car accident and he was killed. And then I was taken to the hospital and yeah, I don't know what more there is to say.
Obviously, as a 10-year-old, and if you haven't had any loss in your life, even as a 10-year-old, having a grandpa or a grandmother or somebody, how old are you now?
Right now I'm 24.
24. So how would you say that you have processed your grief, or how has the loss of your brother impacted you over these years?
Processing the grief, I don't know, because it was so long ago and it was like processing over like such a period of time. And I was also so young that it was just like what death to me was different than what death might have been to my parents or anyone else who might have lose a sibling who's older. But I don't know. They're processing it took a long time. There would be like, I cried at first when it happened, but then I kind of learned to accept it real quick. But then over the course of a year or two, maybe a little more, there would be like random outbursts, like at school or something, where I would just like think about him or I'd hear a song or hear something and I would just start crying out of nowhere. And people would look at me weird because they wouldn't understand if they didn't know who I was or my story. And it was, so I don't know, processing it is a tough question, or I don't know how to answer that just because it's that timeline.
Sure. Did those experiences of those outbursts of grief, even when you were maybe 10 or 12, maybe 13, 14, did those experiences cause you to maybe hide your grief or learn to hide it or bury it because of peers not understanding or making fun of you? Or
no, I wasn't ashamed because I knew that they couldn't understand. And my teachers were really great about making me feel, I guess, loved and accepted and understood. Just pulling me to the side or like doing something to like make sure I had some like extra support in times when I needed it. But
that's really good. Yeah, that's really good. How would you say that it affected you, like, in your family?
My brother's death?
Correct. Like how you experienced your parents, what happened in your family, how did it impact your family?
My mom definitely more so. I've witnessed it, just crying, getting emotional, even to this day, a lot. My dad was never the kind to show, he still doesn't like show a lot of emotions. He'd rather be like there for me if I needed it rather than like me having to be there for him. But it kind of brought our family closer together, I think, just because I had more people reaching out, like aunts, uncles, stuff. then at times, this might sound bad, but it felt like sometimes I put pressure on myself, or there was a burden on me to make up for my brother's loss, to make my parents happy. So if I'd see my mom's crying, my dad not doing too good, I would just like do my best to try to make them cheer up. And of course, there's nothing I can do, because there's nothing a kid or teenager can do to make up for the loss of a child that a parent would go through. But it was just, and then I would get frustrated when I couldn't make them feel better. So it was just, personally, that's how it affected me at times. But I think as a whole, it brought our family closer together, because it was something, I don't know, that family finally, if there were distant relatives, they showed support and just brought people together. But,
yeah, I think you touch on something that is really important for anybody listening, is this idea of burden and responsibility and a shifting of family dynamics that happens in the loss of a sibling. And I think that's very common. I think that's very normal. But I think it's also, as you said, I mean, as a teenager, you also don't have the full capacity to even like understand all that, right? But intuitively, you knew somewhere deep down, like, it's on me now to like, I'm the only one, and I like have to help my parents, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a really common thing. But I think what I want you to hear, and what I would want anybody hearing as they're listening to this, is that your grief matters too, right? And being a good son to your parents, which is wonderful, but your grief matters too. I mean, you lost a twin brother, right? Not even a brother, but a twin brother, which adds a whole nother layer of complexity, sometimes they say. So do you find yourself now, as you're older, still feeling that way, or were you able to work through that some?
I don't find myself feeling that way. I'm not around my parents as much anymore. So
Sure.
like, I might not see when my mom gets sad, or when my dad I can't read their mind. I don't know what they're thinking about. But if I don't really see it, I don't really feel that extra. I have to make her feel better, because she's sad right now, But no, I don't think I feel that way anymore. I think that as I've seen them cry less, it's gone away from me, because it's like the visual right in front of me, seeing them sad and upset makes me feel like, oh shit, I gotta make them feel better now.
Right.
Like, it's not me.
Right. Yeah, I think that when my son died, he was 26 and my daughter was 23 at the time. And I think she also felt this heavy responsibility to take care of her parents now,
Yeah.
But I also think that what that did was she put her own grief aside. And, almost 10 years later now, she'll find herself grieving because she just didn't give herself permission to do that, Has that been your experience at all now, like in your 20s?
No. No, it's been a while since I've cried over the situation. Just because I've really 24 now, so it's been like 14 years.
Sure.
Weird to think about, but I spent more time without him than I have with him.
Correct.
So
yes.
I don't don't even remember what it feels like to have a brother.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so when people ask me like, oh, like if I'm new, like when I was new to my job, they asked me like, oh, like do you have any brothers or sisters? I tell everyone I'm a single child. It's a lot easier than explaining the alternative.
Yes.
And I don't want to be doing a disservice to my brother, but by saying that, but at the same time, I don't want to explain my story to everyone. It's not something that people need to know.
Agreed. Yeah.
So I don't know how to tell them, oh yeah, I have a brother, but you're never gonna meet him. So I can say no, I'm a single child.
Yeah.
But that's I don't find myself grieving that way. I'll look at pictures of him and try to remember what it felt like, but at this point, sometimes it can be very difficult.
Sure. I'm really glad you said that, because of course the question for me always is, how many children do you have? You know, and I have also found myself in certain situations where I just don't answer, or I say like, so I'm glad you said that, and I want grieving people to hear that, right? Someone once taught me, you can be totally open, you can be totally honest without being totally open, right? Because we all know that there are parts of our story, and some people just can't handle that kind of pain, right? And you can't always know who is safe and who isn't, right? So like, you're not going to just open yourself up to that. But I think as grieving people, I always say like, we have to protect that when we need to. So I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you say that. Yeah.
In my old job, when I was one of my good coworkers, I was friends with her. Like, I didn't tell her until I was leaving, and I was leaving to take my new job. And once I told her, she started being like, oh, like, I'm so sorry, like, I feel so bad for you. And I'm like, I don't want your pity. Like, this is why I don't tell people. It's like, I don't want people saying stuff like that to me. I don't want people feeling bad for me, because, you know, maybe this is just my mindset. Maybe it's not good or bad, whatever. But in my mind, I just feel like everyone has their own shit to deal with in life. And I don't want people worrying about me, because everyone has their own battles to fight. And I don't need your pity. So,
yeah.
Because, you know.
Well, and we also know people are so uncomfortable around pain and grief and loss, and people don't know what to say, and they say things that they think are going to be helpful and they're not, and it just gets all and
if they've never experienced it, they don't understand, so sympathies don't mean much.
Yes. One of the things I say is that sympathy is an insensitive comforter. Right? Like, it's not, if you're just gonna be like, oh, I'm so sorry, that doesn't help. Like, that, it's pity. You're just looking at someone with pity. It's not helpful. So I'm glad that you've brought that up. I think that's super important for people to know that. If you had like one or two things to tell people that are listening or watching that you think from your own story might help them, what would you say?
I would just, like, it's a cliche, but time does like heal everything. Like, as you learn to live, you don't forget, but you learn to live with the grief and the changes in life. Like, it gets better, and you know, you learn to deal with it, and everyone has their own different ways of coping. I would also just say, you know, just reach out to people and find a healthy coping mechanism. So there's unhealthy ways, there's healthy ways.
Yes, good point. Yeah, good point.
But no, it gets better once you learn to live with the emotions.
One of the ways I say it is, you know, people in the early stages of grief will often ask me, like, Lisa, is it always going to feel this way? And I'm like, no. The way I'd say it is, it gets softer. It's not that intense, gut-wrenching. Like, it gets softer, but you'll always have it, right? As you said, you just learn to live with it, and you learn ways that you integrate into your life to learn how to live life again and to move forward.
And it can also come up at random times. If you hear a song, if you see something that reminds you, you might be having a perfectly fine day, and then the next moment you're getting emotional or thinking about it when you don't necessarily want to be, or it's not something you've been thinking about. But so it never goes away. It's just it's always there, almost like lingering in the background that you just live with and deal with. But
yes, always. Yeah, I always say that too. Like, for those of us that carry grief, at least for me, I mean, you can be sometimes at the most joyous occasion, a birthday, an anniversary, a graduation, and grief is right there with you, right? And that's the other thing we have to learn, like, to learn that, like, that's just always going to be part of our life.
Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah.
And that's, as you said, there are some really unhealthy ways in which to cope with that, right? And so I think what I'm trying to do in helping people is, like, there are better ways to be able to learn to live with your grief. And it seems like, Nick, you have found some of those healthier ways. You said that you're a nurse and you are now helping people. Can you say a little bit more about that and why you chose being a nurse?
Yeah, so my mom's a nurse, which played a big role. But when I was in the hospital, I don't remember how long I was in, maybe like a week or so.
After the accident?
After the accident. Just the nurses were just like the kindest, sweetest people. They just made me feel so almost loved, and it's just like these strangers who, like, you'll probably never see again in your life, but it's the impact that they made on me and made me feel during probably the hardest time in my life, that made the whole difference to me, that made me think, like, I want to do the same thing for people. But
yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I would say that that is quite the healthy, choice of making grief part of our life. Like, that even sounds so strange to say, like, wow, you have to make grief part of your life, but you either choose that or the alternative is, misery and despair. And, none of us wants to live like that either, So I'm grateful that you kind of found your path and found your way through it. So, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Not that I can think of.
Okay.
No, I just think that everyone's story is different, but, like, me losing my brother so young, would be a very, like, different people who, like, live with their siblings for much longer will have different emotions, different ties, but at the end of the day, like, everyone learns to live with their grief, and, like, it's always going to be there, but you just learn to deal with it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you being with us today and for telling your story, and I know that it'll be meaningful and helpful to others as they listen in and watch. I'm grateful that you have found your way to live with your grief and live into a calling and a pathway that's good for your life.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here. See you, everybody.